All right, so it is the 10 o'clock mark, so I don't want to make you sit through my gardening tips any longer. We will jump right into our topic today, which is what is in CMS's final payer notice for the marketplace. If you don't know me, my name is Chelsea Smith. I am your learning and development specialist here at Action Benefits, and co-piloting today's soiree, we have my favorite growth marketing manager, Randy Lober. Randy, go ahead and say something to our squad before we go on.
Something. Hi, my name is Randy Lober, Growth Marketing Manager here at Action Benefits, and happy to have you all along for the ride here today. If you are familiar with our sessions, maybe you're used to seeing me in the driver's seat, but today I'll be in the passenger seat today, helping to monitor the chat and answer your questions and make sure you leave here a bit well informed about everything going on in and around the marketplace in plan year 2025. We'll go into a few different dimensions here today and talk about a lot of things in detail. But if there's one big theme that we see in this year's final payer notice, it's standardization, where whether that, yes, that is plans and plan options, but we're also seeing lots of standardization in the way CMS wants to treat state-based marketplaces and things like that too. So if you remember nothing else, it's that CMS wants to make things look almost uniform across the country, but we'll tell you what exactly those are over the next 50 some odd minutes or so. All that said, thanks for coming along today, and Chelsea, take us away.
Just so that we are all on the same page, I'd like to talk about what payment notices are. So in case you are unaware, CMS puts out a rough draft of the ways they want to tweak the rules for the under 65 market, along with the rules for the Medicare market, and they release those sometime in kind of like August or so. We get the public, we as the public get those time to comment on those rules. Sometimes it's a little later. And CMS reads those comments and makes any and all adjustments they see fit based on those comments. And then they publish a final copy, which is what we are here to talk about today. I know that some of you might be interested in the Medicare final rulings, and we have already covered that for you. And I know that just 1 hour of the Randy and Chelsea show is never enough for you. So of course we do have more for you. Some of you in the room, we're here for us when we're here with us, excuse me, when we covered that Medicare final rule. And that webinar is recorded and available for you on YouTube. You can get to it through our website. Some of you might even be subscribed to our YouTube channel, which is awesome. Love that for you. But if you're not, if you go to YouTube and type in Medicare final rule, we are the 5th video from the top. I went and checked the other day, and I was really proud of myself for being the 5th video from the top. So if you are interested in those Medicare rules, go ahead and hop over there to that video and check us out there. But you're here now for under 65. So the focus of some of the things, like Randy said, overall, the focus seems to be in the standardization across all states. But these are kind of the categories that I saw pop up in the rulings. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. We are going to look at some essential health benefit changes, some network adequacy changes, plan standardizations, SEP updates, eligibility verification changes, some changes to failure to reconcile, and then some marketplace transition rules for those states who might be looking to exit the federally facilitated marketplace and go off on their own. So a quick stop and jot before we get into the details of each one of those categories. If you could be so kind as to type into the chat which of these categories you are most interested in. That way I can get an idea of where I should hang out and spend a little bit more time, and where I could spend a little less of our focus on. I'm excited to see that plan standardization is coming up, because that one I had to process that for a minute before I felt comfortable talking about it, because I found it difficult to understand the way that CMS kind of put it out there. So I'm happy to clarify that for some of you. And then the SEP updates, those ones are pretty cut and dry. So I'm glad that the people are interested in that as well. But we are going to jump right in here. So our first kind of category is going to be essential health benefit changes. So CMS seems to be, or before I get started here, I'm just going to, just like in the Medicare final rule webinar that we had, I'm going to put the problem, or the problem, I guess I should say, as CMS saw it. That's not necessarily saying that like Action or me or Randy see this as a problem, but that's basically what CMS saw as a problem that they were trying to solve, or the thing that they were trying to target by changing the rule. And then the way that the rule is changed is going to be over there on the right-hand side for you. And then I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a commentary as we talk about each individual item here. So the first one, and probably the one you've heard the most about already, is the non-pediatric dental change. So CMS was concerned that not enough people have access to affordable dental care. And there's too many barriers, it was too expensive, maybe a dentist was too far away, whatever, right? So their solution is that they came up with was that states are now able to make dental coverage for adults an essential health benefit if they so choose. It's not required, but they can choose to do that. But if they do choose to do that, then they eliminate standalone dental plans from from being allowed to be offered, right? So states can start the process to make dental an essential health benefit starting next year in 2025, and then that would go effect in 2027. So it's not really the fast turnaround that you might have wanted, or if you were someone who wanted that essential health benefit dental. It's going to take a little while, so you'll see those added into plans in 2027 if the state that you work in chooses to create that essential health benefit. But like I said before, states cannot have both standalone dental plans and essential health benefits in their dental, embedded into their dental or into their plans. So if a state does make adult dental an essential health benefit, it must sunset that standalone dental plans. What will be included within those dental plans is going to be up to the state. So you could see, for instance, a dental, if two states do put dental as an essential health benefit, Ohio might have a different, that plan might look a little different, that dental benefit might look different in one state like Ohio than it did here in Michigan, though each state will be able to determine what those benefits look like if they choose to make dental an essential health benefit. If they don't, they can still choose to keep those standalone dental plans as well. So pretty exciting for someone who might be interested in getting more of that dental coverage. All right, so essential health benefits under the prescription drugs umbrella is our next one. So CMS is worried that access and affordability for prescription drugs is not getting applied equally, particularly if a drug is covered above and beyond essential health benefit requirements. So consumers don't particularly care how a drug wound up on a formulary, they just care that if a drug is listed as available to them on their formulary, that they can have access to that drug and without any nasty surprises once they get to the pharmacy counter, right? So to sort of even the playing field regarding drug coverage, all prescriptions must function as an essential health benefit if they are covered under a formulary. So as a result, covered drugs must adhere to the same cost-sharing limits, restrictions, and protections, regardless of the reason why they are included on a formulary. A drug that is on a formulary because it's considered an essential health benefit must be covered the exact same way as a drug that is on the formulary and not an essential health benefit. So basically, it doesn't matter if a drug is an essential health benefit or not, the coverage remains the same if that drug is on the formulary. So as an example, a plan can't say, well, drug X counts towards your out-of-pocket max since that drug is an essential health benefit, but drug Y does not because we have it on our formulary just out of the goodness of our heart. So we're not going to let that one count towards your out-of-pocket max. The plan can choose to either have all of the drugs count towards their out-of-pocket max or no drugs counting towards their out-of-pocket max as is written in the language of the plan. They can't pick and choose based on essential health benefit status. That's just an example, but essential health benefits cannot be the determinant of that. It is worth noting, though, that this rule does not apply to large group plans and self-insured plans. Then to further make sure that prescription drugs are meeting the needs of their clients, plan, pharmacy, and therapeutic committees must have a person on that committee to represent the patients. This should give the rest of the committee some insight on how the choices they make when determining those formularies will affect their patients or people who are involved in that plan. All right, so essential health benefit playing field leveling. So CMS noticed that when states are deeming something worthy of essential health benefit status, it might not be taken as seriously as something that might be considered an essential health benefit at the federal level. And because their CMS in general is kind of making it easier for states to change their essential health benefits this year, this is going to be a pretty big concern, I think, for them, because they're going to want to make sure that all essential health benefits are treated equally. So from here on out, essential health benefits are the same regardless of who decided that this thing is an essential health benefit. There's essential health benefits that are added on by the state are not like extra or additional just because they are named by the state as an essential health benefit. An essential health benefit is a benefit, is a benefit, is a benefit. It doesn't matter whether or not it was determined to be an essential health benefit by the state or the feds. It's an essential health benefit. It cannot be treated differently. Okay, so last one in this category is changing essential health benefits within each state. This goes a little bit into the ideas we'll cover towards the end, middle-ish end, about standardization within marketplaces, but I kind of put it in with essential health benefits because it's an essential health benefit thing. So far, it sounds kind of like CMS is giving states more options to customize the benefits available within the borders of their own states. But what is the point of creating all these really cool options that states can have if the process of changing these benefits is too bureaucratic, right? If it's too hard to change all these things, states are not going to change them. So enter in this new process by which states will manage their essential health benefits. 3 changes are going to be made to make this process much easier, and will therefore hopefully encourage states to make changes as often as they see fit to meet the needs of the people who are living in their state. So the first one is that each state will submit one list of essential health benefits that will cover Medicaid, basic health plans if the state has them. We do in Michigan. We have that Healthy Michigan plan, and standard health plans. States can now no longer create one essential health benefit for all health plans and then single out like Medicaid and create a different list of essential health benefits for Medicaid. It states that if states want to make changes, to their essential health benefits, they must submit a new list. I've been kind of thinking of it as like a template that gets used throughout many levels of under 65 care. So one list of essential health benefits for all 3 of those types of coverages, no longer picking and choosing different lists of essential health benefits for different types of plans.
And I guess just to be exceptionally and extraordinary clear about this, we're talking about the EHB benchmark plan for each state. So not that each state has the statutory authority to add to the that list of 10 essential EHBs outlined by the ACA, but each plan or each state does have the ability to change what's in their EHB benchmark plan that all other plans are based off of. So you're exactly right in thinking about this like a template, Chelsea, but I just want to make sure we're real clear and our audience is real clear on what we're talking about. States don't have the capability to change federal law. They're just changing what the benchmark plan looks like inside that state.
Right, absolutely. Yep, just within the state itself. We're not any changing. I always think of them as the 10 healthcare commandments. Those ones are not being changed, just within the state. So then the second thing that happens is the state, and to make sure that the essential health benefits are fair, the list will then be compared to an average employer plan in that state. And then for that essential health benefit list to meet the minimum standard, it has to meet or exceed the details of an average employer plan in that state. So this process of comparing that average employer plan to that list of benefits will take the place of what was previously used, which was called the typicality and generosity standards. So no more, those are no longer a thing. We're just comparing to the average employer plan of that area. Finally, unlike in the past, states don't need to resubmit formularies for consideration when changing their essential health benefits unless that formulary is changing. So no longer will we need to gather up all of our lists of formularies if we as a state are going to change a different type of benefit or add that dental, we don't need to submit our formularies. So overall, it looks like there's a streamlining of the process here for states if they would like to make changes to their essential health benefits. So let's move into network adequacy. So the time and distance standards are going to be adjusted a little bit. So just like in previous years, CMS was concerned about the time that it took to get care and how difficult it was for care to be came by for some individuals. So they once again are applying rules to help care become more easily accessible and quicker to get to for some people, usually in rural areas where this concern would come up. So the time and distance standards themselves aren't necessarily changing, just that they now must apply to all marketplaces the same across all states. So for us here in Michigan, not much is changing here since we function as of right now, we function in a federally facilitated marketplace. So we already adhered to these time and distance standards. So nothing is changing for those of us who are licensed in Michigan. But if you work in a state with its own marketplace, those time and distance standards that are working at the federal level must be applied at the state level as well. This standard and the potential reviews that will check to make sure that these standards are being properly applied will start in 2026. CMS similarly addressed this problem last year, but in regards to wait times, not time and distance standards. So the items that they were going to put into place for wait times that were outlined last year are going to be applied this year, just like they had planned to. And then to double check that these wait times are being adhered to, CMS will be sending out secret shoppers to non-emergency providers like PCPs and behavioral health providers to check up on those wait time standards. All right, so now we're going to hop into some plan standardizations. So this is kind of par for the course. This happens every year, but CMS likes to double check every year that plans within each tier level remain reflective of that tier level when it comes to cost sharing. So they are making small tweaks to the plan designs to ensure a bronze is a bronze and a silver is a silver, just like they do every year. MOOPs and deductibles were tweaked, but not really much else was changed. But what if a plan doesn't fit the standards for a metal tier on purpose and they're doing that for good reason? That, my friends, is now allowed to happen if there's a method behind the madness, right? So to completely understand how this process works, we have to remember that this year issuers cannot have more than 2 plans offering the same set of benefits in the same area. So as in a carrier can offer more than 2 bronze plans with the same benefits in one area. But if they can prove that the cost pertaining to a chronic condition will be at least 25% lower with a third plan that they would add, and everything else matches those 2 other plans, then it can be approved for use in that area. So for example, let's say this super duper insurance carrier offers silver plans Q, R, and S in the same network and the same benefits in the same service area without dental. So those are 3 plans with the same everything. But one of those plans, let's say Q, must be designed to treat a chronic condition. And the cost to treat that chronic condition must be at least 25% less for plan Q than someone enrolled in those other 2 plans, R and S. This way, someone who would benefit from having plan Q can still enroll in plan Q with no problem, but doesn't need to sift through like a ton of plans to find that plan, and then get confused by all the options, and then wind up with plan Q when they don't have that condition and do themselves a disservice, or that plan would not benefit them. So really and simply, I would say that CMS just wants to be cautious of overlapping characteristics here within a area or a characteristic. So no combination of characteristics can be shared twice in one place. So whether that place be like a metal level, a network, or a service area.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of a loose analogy you can make here between these plans that will be targeted for chronic conditions in the under 65 market to C-SNPs we might see in the Medicare market. And I say loose analogy because they're not exactly the same in terms of requirements and eligibility and so on and so forth. But that's kind of the way you can think about it. We did ask, and in fact, I sat in on one of CMS's webinars and asked them if those plans that are designed to treat target chronic conditions have to be marketed as such. So do they have to include heart and health plan or diabetes plan in the name? And that is not true. Although we suspect when carriers start rolling out some of their products in August, September or so, that we will see some of that happen if someone wants to hop on that bandwagon. The other question we had, and we're kind of getting the word from carriers, is like, so how are you actually going to make treating that chronic condition 25% cheaper? And I suspect some of the magic there is going to happen the same way it does on C-SNPs. Um, in terms of changing specialist copays, right? So it's easier to go see the specialist who's treating you for that condition or see that specialist at lower cost. You might also see formularies rearranged, creating either a tier 0 or a tier 6, where drugs that are there for treating that condition might be placed on that special tier at low or no cost share for that condition. So it's an exciting time, right? An exciting place to see some innovation potentially in the market, but we don't know for sure what will happen. So carriers come out with their official product launches later on this year.
I do want to say too, Randy, I do like that analogy, that C-SNP analogy, but I do want to point out too, they said in that CMS webinar that unlike in the Medicare space, if a plan is designed to treat a condition in this space, that doesn't mean the person has to have that condition to sign up for the plan, right? You don't need to, just because the plan is designed for someone with diabetes, if a person wants that plan still makes sense for them, and they don't have diabetes, they are perfectly allowed to sign up for that plan. There's no need for a doctor to sign a note saying, oh, this person has diabetes, they're qualified for this plan or whatever. That's not the case in the under 65 market here. So if that plan, if you find yourself looking at a plan for one of your clients and that client doesn't have that condition, you are more than welcome to sign that client up for that plan. There's no need to prove that they have whatever condition that plan is designed to treat, which is pretty cool. There's a little more flexibility there. So yeah, there's going to be some innovation in the market, and it's not necessarily as limited as Medicare is going to be in that area. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so last one before we take a slight break and hear something from our audience. CMS doesn't feel that catastrophic plans are often the best fit for those looking for comprehensive coverage. I can speak for myself as someone who had catastrophic coverage once upon a time, probably the case. Therefore, they don't want to make it easy for someone to have that coverage for more than a year at a time. So anybody with a catastrophic plan will have to manually enroll in that plan every year if they want to keep it. If they do nothing, then they will be enrolled in a marketplace plan that is closest to the plan that they have, kind of like how crosswalking works now. The same thing will happen if a person ages off of a catastrophic plan. They will be signed up for the most similar qualified health plan that is available to them. There's no more just aging off and having no coverage. So you will either get put into a bronze plan or whatever plan is most similar to what you had in your catastrophic coverage. So we just talked about a lot, and Randy and I talked a lot, so I want to give you a second to digest before we head on to other things. So how might these plan changes, if you could be so kind as to put in the chat for me, affect how you choose a plan for your clients?
Stacy, I think you're exactly right there. A lot of clients are premium driven out there, right? So we will absolutely see how, or have to see how a lot of these things affect rates. Rate filing is due for individual plans in about 2 weeks from now or so, if I remember correctly. So we'll be able to take a look at some of those rate filings a little bit later on and see what carriers think this is going to do to them.
I'm interested in that and how kind of the formularies for some of those plans will change, because yes, I agree. Premiums are a huge driver, but as someone now who is taking medications and looking at what those cost and have family and friends on medications, sometimes a medication can be so expensive or so detrimental to that person and necessary that maybe the cost of that medication is the biggest driver for that person. And if a carrier comes up with a plan where you know, a tiered drug is a different tier where it could be that much less costly for that person, that might be the deciding factor for them. So our next item on the docket is SEP updates. So while most of the time SEPs allow those who are in unique circumstances the opportunity to apply for coverage, problems can arise when effective dates between different entities don't line up. So in worst case scenarios, lapses in coverage can occur when those start dates don't jive, right? So an example might be when someone is approved for coverage in one state, but moves to another between their QHP selection and when their coverage starts. And so if the coverage date for that new state isn't the first of the next month, there might be a period of time where that person has a lapse in coverage and while they're waiting for their new coverage to start. That's just one example, but those things can and sometimes do happen. So now effective dates will always be the first of the month after the approval for that plan. Okay, poverty level SEP extensions. So when consumers and families have a change in their circumstances that grant them premium tax credits, they might be stuck waiting around until open enrollment to take advantage of them, since gaining those credits for some people in that group aren't necessarily enough to trigger an SEP. So starting now, states can extend SEPs to anybody who qualifies for premium tax credits, not just those within such and such percentage of the poverty level. So if you newly qualify for premium tax credits, you now also qualify for an SEP, full stop. It doesn't matter what percentage of the poverty level you have hit. If you qualify for those tax credits, and once you qualify for those tax credits, you now also qualify for an SEP. And that did start now. That is, we're not waiting until later on to apply that. So for 2020, but for 2025, in case you were curious, 150% of the poverty level will be $22,590 for an individual and $38,730 for a family of three. All right, so staying in front of your clients is a great way to maintain that relationship you might have with them. I'm going to ask you really quick, how could you use these new SEP rules to benefit your clients? I have one on the top of my head. I bet you have that one on top of mind as well. Honestly, here where my mind went is my mind went to if any of my clients had a change in income, and if they had a change in income, I could let them know, hey, there's more I can do for you. If your income ever changes, contact me, let me know, and I can get some help for you. I had someone say something about emailing these updates out to try to generate more calls. Awesome idea as well.
For me, actually, one thing that sticks out about that cross market one is maybe a little bit outside the box. But if you happen to have referral arrangements or referral agreements with local realtors, right, and you have people that are just now moving to the area, maybe they are moving from one of those states where they might have to wait, uh, 30 days, 45 days to hit that effective date. So it might be something, to put in a mailer, get coverage if, the first of next month or something, or to slide in your coupon pack or whatever that looks like with your local realtor. Um, could be a way to, drive some traffic in a kind of out of the box way.
That or some like tenants, maybe apartment complexes as well that are known to have people coming from uh, different states or different areas that might have different rules. All right, so eligibility verification changes is our next topic. So once upon a time, there was a time when CMS was toying with the idea of allowing states to have more control over what they considered a resource when determining Medicaid eligibility. The intention was for states to feel empowered to allow more people on board the Medicaid boat, right? They wanted to give states more options to let more people onto Medicaid. But as the comments rolled in, some were worried that the opposite was going to occur and states would use this rule to become more stringent in their requirements. So between that unwinding and all the other stuff that was going on with Medicaid, CMS was figuring it was probably best to take that idea back to the lab and work on it a little more before making it a final rule. So they did not say that they were going to abandon this idea. They just said they were going to play with it a little more, and give the unwinding some time to finish unwinding before they were going to apply this new rule. So stay tuned. It is not going away. It's just they're still working on it. So checking for sure if someone who was signing up for marketplace coverage who had been recently incarcerated was just getting too expensive. So CMS is no longer going to require that states verify if someone was recently released from jail or prison when they enroll in a marketplace plan. If a state wants to ask that information, they are free to do so. And the individual can attest themselves personally to that answer. And the state is still welcome to check up on that information if they want to, but that's on the state, both procedurally and economically. So there's no requirement to do that. And if they do choose to do that, they're footing the bill. And if they don't want to do that, they want to ask, they can just believe the person when they say, yeah, I was in jail or prison, or they can just not ask. It's up to the state. So Medicaid and CHIP status verification. If states want to verify if someone was enrolling on the marketplace held Medicaid or CHIP, they would need to foot their own bill for the use of that verification software. So the verification software is still around. It is still provided. But if you want to use that software to verify those statuses with CMS, that state would then be paying for the use of that software. It is no longer coming free with your CMS subscription. So failure to reconcile. This is probably another meatier one here. So we are all probably familiar with failure to reconcile in here, but just in case you aren't, here's the story. So every year consumers who receive premium tax credits must provide documentation proving that they are indeed eligible for those credits come tax season. So as of now, the state will just drop those tax credits off that person like a hot potato if that person fails to provide those documents, which is what the term failure to reconcile refers to, is when when that person does not provide that paperwork and they are then dropped from those tax credits. That tax credits are no longer given to that individual. But starting in 2025, if a person fails to provide those documents, they will get notified that their tax credits will be taken away if they do not provide that paperwork within a year. And then those tax credits will be taken away a year later if no action is taken by that consumer. So this, as a reminder, does not absolve folks of proving that they qualify for these tax credits. It just simply is CMS's way of forcing states to try harder to remind people to turn that paperwork in before they actually go ahead and revoke those tax credits.
Mhm. And just to add on to that, what this reg is really targeting is those states that, like Chelsea said, were quick on the trigger, right? There were states that said, "Oh, you didn't file your taxes in a timely fashion, and you didn't reconcile. We are taking your tax credits off the table right away." So now this is CMS's way of, like we said, standardizing how all marketplaces approach things, whether it's a federally facilitated marketplace or a state-based marketplace. And that you're going to see that theme throughout the next couple regulations we talk about here, is that especially in those state-based marketplaces, CMS is really cracking down on them and wanting to make sure that everyone has an experience that approximates closely what you'd see on the federal marketplace.
Alrighty, so if you've been to any webinars with me, you know how much I love to talk about touch points in marketing, and how to get yourself in front of clients, even if you already have them as a client. So how could you use the tax reconciliation process as a client touch point? Awesome. So just to keep on keeping on here, I would, if I were an agent, I know with my homeowners insurance agent, she uses all sorts of things to touch point with me and get in contact with me to kind of talk about some other options for me for my homeowners insurance. If I were an agent and I knew that my client got tax credits, I would kind of remind them every year around tax season, hey, make sure you get that documentation, make sure you're submitting that when you're doing your taxes. And if you are struggling with that, let me know and I can help you. I wouldn't do their taxes for them, obviously, but getting that paperwork and or helping make sure they have that paperwork would just be one more touch point. And then you could kind of slip in there, hey, have you ever thought of such and such? Or hey, you ever think about some hospital indemnity, whatever it is, ancillary product, you know, any sort of touch point just to make sure that you're front and center for them. All right, so marketplace transition rules. These are the rules that we are going to talk about for those states who are looking to maybe switch from a federally facilitated marketplace to a state-based marketplace. There's a lot of states that are looking or toying with that idea of doing that. Georgia had started it and they're pushing it back. We said in Michigan that we might be interested in that. So this is what kind of it might look like for us if we do wind up doing that. So CMS realizes that the transition from the federally facilitated marketplace to a state operated marketplace is a lot of moving parts. And they also have it in the back of their heads that many states, like I said earlier, are either confirmed to be moving this or are considering doing it in the future. So when a state decides to move to a state-based marketplace instead of a federal one, they must continue to use the federally facilitated marketplace for 1 year before they can implement their own marketplace. So this way they can really kind of focus on getting all the rest of the aspects correct, and then they can ease into getting that marketplace portion right after everything else is kind of frameworked to be functional. Then they can hop into having their own marketplace. So states that did have their own marketplace were leaving some consumers confused as they were allowing third parties to determine consumers' eligibility. And this is not going to be legal anymore. Only the state-based marketplace will be allowed to determine someone's eligibility. If a third-party platform wants to do the enrollment for the consumer, they absolutely can do that. But the plan must be displayed the same way it is on the state-based marketplace, and the website has to have the exact same information as healthcare.gov. They were finding in other states, you know, sometimes the if they were using some sort of other platform to enroll a client, it was not always as up to date as healthcare.gov and might be listing things a little differently. And people were getting confused and saying something different than the state marketplace. I don't understand. Nope. Now it all has to be the same. And it has to be as up to date instantaneously as healthcare.gov is. There's no, so that way there's no confusion for people who are shopping outside of that state-based marketplace. This one's pretty straightforward. Unless grandfathered otherwise, states must have an 11-week uninterrupted open enrollment period. And it should go from November 1st to January 15th, unless you were grandfathered in otherwise to have something different go on. This is to make sure that everyone is familiar with what goes on when during open enrollment, and that people aren't creating problems for themselves and gaps in their coverage, because when they move from one state to another, maybe one state they don't have as long of an open enrollment period. They figure, oh, I'll be fine when I move to this new state to get my coverage later. They move there, they realize, oh no, like that the open enrollment's not as long in the state and I missed out on my opportunity to get some coverage. That's not a thing anymore. Finally, our last change is in the call center world. So all marketplace call centers, if a marketplace has one, must provide access to a live representative during business hours. They must be able to provide consumers information on their tax credits, cost sharing reduction eligibility, and help consumers understand their options for quality health plans, facilitate the comparison of those plans, and help submit enrollment applications to the marketplace. So a call center can't just pick and choose the things that it wants to provide supports for. If you're going to have a call center, it must be able to do all of those things. Whoop. Okay, so now that we have covered everything that is going to be changing in 2025, or as some of it already has been changed, let's go over the things that you can expect to stay the same. So agents, brokers, and web brokers are required to document the receipt of consent from the consumer or their authorized representative. Consent doesn't expire unless it's marked on the form or until the consumer or rep revokes it, and it must contain the items that are listed on your screen there. So just like in the Medicare space, this consent must be kept for at least 10 years. So those of you who dabble in the Medicare world as well, this consent form should feel kind of familiar to you, kind of a similar process. And then you must keep documentation of that consent for at least 10 years. A similar required form agents must still collect as well as the review of marketplace consent. Agents, brokers, and web brokers are required to document that eligibility application information has been reviewed and confirmed to be accurate by the consumer or their authorized representative prior to the submission of the application. Consumer must take an action of some kind to produce the documentation, and it must include the information that is listed on your screen. And just like the other one, agents must keep this on file for 10 years. So two forms, a little different. One is just saying that they consent to, that the consumer consents to you do something for them. The other one is that their information is correct. So how can we be within the rules when we get this? Because they did not standardize a form, right? It is up to you, the agent, how you would like to collect these two items. You may gather it in any way you so choose, so long as it is a signed document, verbal confirmation, email, or handwritten communication. I personally think that clickable, fillable PDFs is the way to go here. You can type on it. It's really handy for both agents and consumers to use. So we made them for you. It is even uploaded into Coverage for One so that if you use it, you can just download it from the homepage. It's ready to ship off to your clients. We can add your agency's branding and documentation to this documentation for you if you would so choose to do so. If you want that, let us know. Randy is so wonderful that he is going to drop those into the chat for you. So if you want to use those fillable documents, clickable and fillable, sorry, PDFs, you are more than welcome to do so. Stacy's asking, so once we obtain these two documents, they are good for a lifetime. That's up to what you chose to put into that document, right? If you're using the one that we gave to you, there's a little spot where you can choose to put in whether or not that is going to expire, or if you had use your own and you wrote in there, hey, this is going to expire in a year, then it expires in a year. There is not a template for that. That's up to you or whatever ends up being in that document.
I want to chime in on that because there's two separate requirements I think we need to be mindful of here. The first one, and what you just spoke to there, Chelsea, when we're talking about the consent to work with you on the marketplace, that can be good for a lifetime, right? As long as you don't hard or hand code an expiration date in there. But the review of marketplace eligibility application has to be complete and documented anytime a change to the application is made. So if a consumer updates their income, that changes their application, right? So and if you do that with them and on their behalf, you would need a new form to document that instance. If they change their address, right, move to a different zip code, you would need that review of application form or call recording or written notice, whatever the case might be, every time a change is made to the application. So consent can be good for lifetime, depending on how you word it. Review of eligibility application has to be done every time something on the application changes.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
welcome, Stacy.
Right, because keep in mind that is what that document is saying, that all the information that you put into the app that application goes in is true and correct. So if that information does change, then yes, a new review of marketplace eligibility form would have to be filled out because that information is not valid anymore, right? Because if they change their address, then that form is no longer representing that correct information, right? So like we said, I think they're easiest just to fill out electronically. And that way you can just save them on a hard drive somewhere for 10 years. Make sure you're keeping those for 10 years. Or we can, if you want to do your own thing, that's absolutely fine. As of right now, there is no standardized form that CMS would like you to use. So you're welcome to use the ones that we created for you or do your own thing. So changing NPNs on a consumer application, this can be a little bit of a hot button thing here. So documented consent must be obtained from the consumer when a change is being made to an application, including when the NPN is being changed from one agent or broker to another. The consent must be given prior to assisting the consumer with applying or enrolling. Agency-wide consent is acceptable so long as all of the information is the same and the agent is functioning within that agency. A new consent form is not needed for re-enrollment purposes so long as none of the information on that form has changed. So then remember, you and the consumer get to decide how and when that consent gets revoked for that consent form. Alrighty, so that's just about everything that I had for you guys today. Thank you for spending some time here with us today. I want to put our contact information on the screen there. So if you do find yourselves with any other questions, it's not the end all be all. Feel free to email us at learning@actionbenefits.com or give us a call. If you have an account manager, of course, that account manager is there to answer any questions you might have. You can go ahead and give them a call, shoot them an email, whatever way is most comfortable for you to get a hold of that account manager. Randy, is there anything else you'd like to say, add, what have you before we close it out with our audience today?
I'd like to, to echo something Robert said a bit earlier in the chat, and that in the scheme of things, right, there's not a lot that directly impacts you as the agent, how you do business, right? There's no new disclaimers put in here. The consent documentation isn't new, although we were happy to clarify that for you today. So like I said at the beginning, the theme today is really just standardization. Not much that, like I said, impacts anything you do or everything you do on a day-to-day basis. It's really just CMS kind of flexing its muscle and kind of bending the state marketplaces to its will at the moment, however you decide to feel about that.
Thank you all so much, seriously, for spending some time here with Randy and I today to talk about the changes to the under 65 market. Have a great rest of your day.